All right, guys, there's something we have to bring up. This is probably going to be longer than normal. 33% of you will agree, 33% will disagree, and the other 33% probably won't even give a crap in the first place. But I think it is very important, not only to the non believers, but also to the believers. And what I have to talk about today is something that Hayley WIlliams brought to the forefront in an interview yesterday. She brought to the forefront of the cultural zeitgeist about the Christian music industry. Now, a lot of people who grew up Christian and listen to Christian music, which is now turned secular, and at least in a lot of ways, and is also almost like Nickelodeon, messed up the people that were groomed and cultivated. And yes, I use groomed in that way for a specific reason. A lot of them have either lost faith or have stumbled and faltered. Now, we all stumble and falter, but I think it is something that everyone needs to see on how mainstream media and these conglomerates and everything like that, everything in between, how the industry just takes lives, weaves their little pattern to make their money, and leaves them in the dust. So let's go straight into this. This is not straight into this. It's going to be a long video. And I have already prayed. So I hope the Lord guides my words with this. So Hayley WIlliams, if you don't know her, singer of Paramore, she grew up singing in church choirs and everything like that. That's how she got noticed in the first place, and then lead singer of Paramore. She hopes Christian music industry crumbles amid the Michael Tate scandal. F all of you who knew and didn't say anything. What exactly is she talking about? We will get into that. But if you don't know who Michael Tate is, anybody from the 90s knows DC Talk. And if you've been in the Christian industry at all or listen to Christian music, you probably know who the Newsboys are. And up until recently, he was the lead singer for the newer iteration of the Newsboys. Now we go a little bit more further into it. The Paramore singer also slammed the CCM industry for a lack of gay-affirming support that she believes leads closeted musicians into self-hating and destructive behavior. Yes, we're opening a can of worms. I don't think gay-affirming support from a Christian perspective is necessarily the right way to go, but let's hear everybody out. Obviously, I will interject as I see fit, but I'm going to try to let Hayley give her little 2 cents, and then we'll get into some of the deeper issues. So, Paramore singer has reacted angrily to reports that Christian music star Michael Tate has been accused of sexual assaults. And yes, I'm not going to bleep that out because this is something important that needs to be talked about in his past relationships with young men. Writing in an Instagram post, this is Hayley's words: "I hope the CCM industry crumbles and fuck all of you who knew it and didn't do a damn thing." So while excoriating those in the Christian music business, she believes covered up his alleged behavior because he's been in the industry for like 25, 26 years. Since the night, well, actually, it's been longer than that, 35, 36 years. She also shows some sympathy for the former Newsboys and DC Talk singer, saying he has spent decades in the limelight, denying his identity and needing gay-affirming support. Now, this is where I disagree. I don't like using like sexual identity, those kind of words, need gay affirming. It's like, it's for my own personal faith. You shouldn't be affirmed that you're something aberrant to what God wants. However, you also shouldn't be groomed into thinking that like, okay, I have to get away with something, because I know from personal experience from my own parents, not in any way sexual, but from my own parents growing up, I was the black sheep. You tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it just to prove you wrong. And this is something that a lot of people go through. So, I mean, if he did have those proclivities and those urges, and especially being a star of that kind of height, because DC Talk was huge. Y'all remember those Lifeway, not Lifestone, those Lifeway stores? And that's where we went for our Christian metal music and our Christian rock. They used to have Bless the Fall. They used to have Devil Wears Prada. They had Amberlin. They had Reliant K. They had Newsboys. They had Cutlass back before they just went full worship. But anyway, I'm digressing from that. This used to be a huge part of the music industry. And to some extent, it still is. Because this, going back to her, because this is a man whose entire faith identity is built upon a faulty structure of self-hatred, to please a system that would rather cover up abhorrent behavior for 20 years and make money off it rather than accept that being gay is not the problem. So there's two ways that we can take this, and I halfway agree with her and I halfway disagree with her. This is a man whose entire faith identity, but then when you're talking about his sexual identity, he chooses that. He also chooses his faith identity, but that's not something like you either believe in God and you follow in him and you have faith in him, or you don't. It's not something that is fluid like people say nowadays the sexual identity is. So I disagree with that. Right there off the bat is built upon a faulty structure of self-hatred. I don't think it should be self-hatred. I think it should be praying to follow after Jesus's footsteps. That's where it should be going. But I understand, because I've also talked with people in the industry that are saying like, actually James Arnold Taylor. Oh yeah, don't let me forget this. James Arnold Taylor at the panel, the Rippaverse panel in Dallas, like 2 weekends ago. He actually talked specifically about this, saying that the Christian media were saying there's either not enough God or why do you have so much God in this? They actually don't want like to promote the message of faith. They're using the faith as a grift in order to make money. So yes, I do agree with her on this. I don't know how much she knows, but the rest of the article will say that as well. So to please the system that rather cover up abhorrent behavior, yes, they will, because it's all about the dollar signs for them. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And they just want these, they want these seals to clap. That's all they want. That's all. Whenever the money, I know people say like money is the root of all evil. I disagree with that, but it has an element of truth in it whenever it comes to that kind of stuff. That's basically what she is referring to whenever she says this little part. And I know this article is long. We're not going to go through the entire thing, but I have a lot of stuff that I have to say about this. So some of the members of Paramore grew up around the Christian music community in Nashville, Tennessee. I mean, obviously, Hayley, she grew up in church, singing with choirs, doing solos and everything else. Guitarist Taylor York is the son of the former head of CCM Group. So that's where, when you see CCM, it's Capital Christian Music Group. He grew up there too. And Williams brings that perspective from having been on the periphery of the business from a young age to her fiery missive about the Tate scandal. What is the Tate scandal? The Tate scandal is that he had been not only grooming, but possibly assaulting young men from the age of 13. Now, none of this is all alleged. None of this has been confirmed. However, there is a very harrowing tweet. Maybe it's not a tweet, it's an Instagram post from him that we'll get to later on. I know I'm just like shoving things out there because of what I know and how much I have to say. The amount of things I have to say and the amount of people I know who are likely changed forever by this man, by the industry that empowered, enabled him, and no one but the TikToker who broke the story said a word about him needing gay affirming support. I don't know why she is so, it's okay to be gay, just don't touch kids. Why does that need to be a part of the industry? Why does it need to be a part of anything at all? Now, I understand that they're just solely focused down and bearing down on you, like make money, make product. We need money. Good time. Yeah, you're multi-platinum for 25 years. Do more, do more, do more. Anywho, the singer's text overlays an image of a story published Friday in England's Guardian newspaper, further investigating the allegations against Tate, who this week posted a confession, so to speak, that in a broad sense admitted, yeah, most of the stuff largely true, however, not all true. It wasn't very specific at all, and he didn't, so obviously, I'm assuming at this point, it's going to go to court, and there will be depositions, there will be things, there will be evidence that has to be brought forward. He's going to get slung through the mud. Now, I'm not on his side. I'm not against him either way, but I don't think this whole thing should be about the fact that he was closeted gay. That does not give you the right to, like, allegedly touch 13-year-olds. Now, as far as Hayley was saying, She wrote in that being gay is not the problem. She added on, I grew up around this, meaning the Christian music industry. I'm not afraid of any of these people. Most of them written me off by now anyway because of the path that she has taken. Now, how many stories like this from very small corner of the music industry will we hear before we realize that capitalizing on people's faith and vulnerability is the sin? 100% agree with that. I 100% am in her corner, her very small corner, according to her. I'm just kidding with that. But with that last little bit of that sentence, capitalizing on people's faith and vulnerability is the sin here. These people are not in it for God. They're selling you God. It's almost like a mega church kind of thing. If you give money, God will give you blessings. It doesn't work that way. But a lot of people, and a lot of the bands that I listen to, let's bring it out right now. The Devil Wears Prada. Reliant K, I already talked about them. Amberlynn, August Burns Red. Who else? Who else can I name off the top of my head? There's so many. Demon's not Demon Slayer. Oh my gosh, Demon Hunter. Sorry. From pop punk bands to metal bands, they were all doing Christian messaging. Now, to my knowledge, only 2 of those have stayed actually Christian. Also, Emery. I need to bring in Emery because they're actually in the thumbnail. Now, Emery has stayed, and they've made the podcast called Bad Christian Podcast. And so they talk about their faith from a very nuanced way that I don't always agree with, but they still have their faith in Jesus Christ and like their love of God. I don't always agree with it. Actually, you shouldn't always agree with anything unless it comes from the Holy Word. But to my knowledge, August Burns Red is the only one that hasn't renounced their faith, because the Devil Wears Prada did. Mike Ranica. There literally is, there's a lyric in one of their songs, all of love can be traced to a maker. And now they're throwing out. Now they're throwing out cuss words. Now they're literally denouncing God on the stage in front of their peers, in front of their fans, in front of their audience. This is not the only time it's happening. Oh, Sleeper, Micah Kennard, he almost had the same thing, and he had to take a step back and then reconnect with God because he had written him off as well. Oh, Sleeper is an absolutely great band. But so there's been that as well. My good friend, Chris Redder, he started out in Emarosa and now is in from Moss to Flames. But he completely renounced his Christian faith after getting into the industry. If y'all didn't know Emarosa, before Johnny Craig, before whatever the new guy's doing right now, before him was Johnny Craig. Before Johnny Craig was Chris Redder. And that was a Christian band. I saw them live when they were young. And I was young too. But what I'm going on to say about all of this is that people who are getting into this industry, they're being capitalized upon because they're getting these record deals. They're getting these, not only national tours, but sometimes multinational tours. And they're making the money. And what they're being told is you got to keep producing this because this is what sells. Now, it almost kind of seems to me in a way that this is why some of the bands, they end up just doing whole worship albums. It's like, yeah, we don't really want to be around those other kind of people anymore. We'll just do worship music. However, there's a problem with that too, because there's scandals about Hillsong. And Hillsong is known for just being church worship music. And they've had scandals and stuff like that. So I think really what it is, it's almost like Jesus turning the tables over in the tabernacle. That no, you shouldn't be profiting off of other people's emotion towards faith. Poking at their faith and poking at their emotions and everything like that, when really you're just sitting back doing cocaine, doing drugs, getting drunk, touching little boys, having sex with women out of wedlock and stacking cash. But this is what it is to make it big in today's society. And this needs to come to a head because it's completely against the word of God. She concludes, we're still on Hayley. She concludes her message by saying, I hope the CCM industry crumbles and fuck all of you who knew and didn't do a damn thing. I bet I've got your number. And by the way, if you're not angry too, then maybe it's time to question why. There are going to be a lot of people who do not question. I'm just there for a paycheck. Those kind of people exist. In my job right now, I am one of them. It's like, but my job has nothing to do with my faith. But you know what I'm saying whenever I say this kind of stuff. There are a lot of people like, oh yeah, I see it. The Harvey Weinstein thing comes to mind. A lot of people saw it. Everybody knew about it. They didn't say anything because it's like, not my business. Pay me my money. Now, as far as the Michael Tate allegations go, 2 of the alleged victims the Guardian spoke with, and that came out on Friday, which is yesterday, gave their names for this latest piece, while others shared their experience on the condition of anonymity. The alleged victims were 13 to 29 at the time of their encounters, and the newspaper described them as evangelical youth who were starstruck when meeting their childhood hero, but quickly saw their image of him as a role model of Christian piety dissolve as they were taken on a bumpy ride of rock and roll debauchery. And later on, Tate will say that, like, oh yeah, he was on cocaine for a long time. He was drinking way too much alcohol for a long time. He has since gotten sober, so he says, but he actually went to a rehabilitation clinic in Utah. He was there for 6 or 7 months. Supposedly he's clean and sober now. So like, this is where the tides kind of turn. We will get to his words, but that's just a little precursor for what we're about to get to, because the next bit of this is basically just like when he suddenly quits the groups that he's been a part of in the middle of tour dates, whenever he tells the people and the people who were in the bands, and he was just like, hey, I've been living a double life. Did he expound on that? No, he hasn't. But this is all they knew at the time. Now, they had seen signs. Obviously, when you're on tour with people, you're around them a lot. So they had seen signs, but apparently he kept everything pretty quiet, pretty closeted. But on June 10th, and this is where I'm just going to skip ahead to this part because I want to get Michael Tate's own words. Everyone deserves their chance to speak. And obviously, it's going to be the court of public opinion. And then if anything's proven, then it will go to court and like, yes, you should get your punishment if any punishment is deserved. But on June 10th, just shy of a week after the explosive Roy's Report article, Tate posted his confession on social media. And this is his words right here. Recent reports of my reckless and destructive behavior, including drug and alcohol abuse and sexual activity, are sadly largely true. And this was an Instagram post. For some 2 decades, I used and abused cocaine, consumed far too much alcohol, and at times touched men in an unwanted, sensual way. Were these men of age? Either way, like, this is not Christian behavior, and it's not something that, should be condoned in any way. However, more context is needed, and I'm always going to be the one to say that. It's like, I need all the context before I can bang the gavel down. I am ashamed of my life choices and actions and make no excuses for them. I will simply call it what God calls it, sin. That's a very Baptist way of saying that. I don't blame anyone or anything but myself. While I might dispute certain details in the accusations against me, I do not dispute the substance of them. I'm ashamed to admit that for years I have lied and deceived my family, friends, fans, and even misled my bandmates about aspects of my life. I was, for the most part, living 2 distinctly different lives. I was not the same person on stage Sunday night that I was at home on Monday. I was violating everything I was raised to believe by my God-fearing dad and mom about walking with Jesus, was grieving the very God I loved and sang about for most of my life. And when I abruptly left Newsboys in January, I did so to get help. I wasn't healthy physically or spiritually. I was tired of living a double life. I spent 6 weeks at a treatment center in Utah receiving help that may have saved my life from ultimate destruction. I have been clean and sober since, though I still have lots of hard work ahead of me. Now, can we take him at his word? That's basically all we can do right now. And I think the real issue about all of this is that when you've been in the industry for so long, I know I keep going back to the industry, but it does mold people. We see people like the kids that grew up like Disney Plus shows or Disney shows, Nickelodeon shows, and we see how they were groomed as they were growing up because they were a hot commodity. They were making them money. It had a hit show, and those people are absolutely stained to the core by how they were treated. Not only sexually assaulted, but also mentally stifled the entire time. They didn't have a chance, really. They didn't really have a chance to discover themselves, to live their own lives. No, they were thrust into stardom, and they had to keep that stardom because basically when you become a musician, that has to be your life. If that becomes your full-time job, you have to keep it your full-time job. Much the same as streamers. I know we're not putting it on the same level, but if you go full-time with streaming and you quit your normal job, you could lose it at any point. So you do your best, and sometimes that includes grifting. Sometimes that includes selling out. You have to do your best in order to keep the money coming. And as soon as you get that money, a lot of people fall into the cradle of basically, how do I say this? A lifestyle. They don't know what it was like whenever they were struggling, whenever things actually meant something to them. When you're doing it every day because you're paid to do it, you lose the heart behind it. And I think that's what a lot of these guys ended up doing. Some of my favorite bands have renounced their Christian faith, and I don't listen to them anymore. It sucks. Their old music is good, but now I don't even want to listen to the old music. Sometimes I still pull out some bangers, but like, I don't even want to listen to them anymore because of what they have done, what they used to stand for, and now they stand completely opposite against it. It's freaking sad, man. I'm going to end this one right around here. There's a whole lot more that I can say, but what I halfway agree with Hayley WIlliams and what she's saying about the Christian music industry. Yes, these kind of institutions need to crumble, need to fall. This shouldn't be allowed to happen to people who actually have a vision, because a lot of these people, the reason they get famous, at least especially back at DC Talk days, way back in there in the early 90s, the way they sent like little mixtapes, little audition tapes that they recorded on like a 4-track recorder on cassette in their garage, and it reached the people. They were doing what they wanted to do, and then it became corporatized, and they got marred by it all as well. I'm freaking sick of this. Shout out to August Burns Red. Jake Lurs, their lead screamer, is a pastor. He has stayed with it. Let's just see, their drummer, Matt Greiner from the Amish country, one of the best drummers, one of the best technical drummers in the world, I would say, and most versatile, I would say, like that too. Stayed that way the entire time. Still super humble. Still preaching the gospel message. It's not that you have to preach the gospel, but once you put it out there, once you sell yourself as a Christian band and making Christian music, you might as well, you should stay with it. Don't sell yourself out for money. Don't sell your soul for money. Too many people have done that. And quite frankly, it turns a lot of people off. But then you'll have the masses. Don't worry. Sell your soul. Anyway, this is Malty from Mouth of Malty. I know there's a lot more than what I normally do, but I felt led to say something. It's been bugging me for a long time. And hey, feel free to disagree with me. It's totally cool. Y'all have anything to say, leave it down in the comment section below. We'll see you later. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.